Thank you so much for joining us for one of our Hour of Code sessions. And this week isn't just called Hour of Code. It has a couple different names depending on who you ask. Other people refer to this week as Computer Science Education Week. So the goal of events like this is to give more students opportunities to try out some different things with coding and learning about computers and how they work and how we can take control of computers and have them do what we want them to do, basically. So today we're going to be using a tool which I think is new to both classes, but we're going to be using Scratch. And hopefully this will show okay. It looks like I'm good. So this is actually the project I'm going to walk us through creating today, more or less. So you can see that my face is on the screen, and that's because we're going to be using a feature in Scratch called video sensing. So how it works is I become a part of my game. So Scratch can recognize basically just how the color is changing, and I can interact with things on the screen. So for example, there's a balloon up here. I know you can see me twice on your screen, but if I touch that balloon, it will move and it bounces around. And you might also notice that my points go up, that little points counter every time I touch the balloon. And I can use my head too. Watch this. My head can be, so I can control it using my head as well, or whatever else I have. I could use something else. Could be like my paddle. I could pretend I'm playing ping pong, basically. So if I'm talking through my code here, because as a coder, I find that that's a great way to understand what I'm doing. Computers read things in order. So they read things in like a sequence. So when I'm thinking about this game, I can plan it out by thinking about the order that I want things to happen. So for example, I know that I want this little balloon that if something bumps into it, I want it to move and I want it to change color. So if I do that, if something touches it, it moves and changes color. It's also in my code that if something touches that balloon, then the points should go up by 1. So right now it says 27, but if I touch it, it goes up to 28. Oh, it's still coming. It's coming at me, so I get more points. I also have it set to be that when I hit the start button, the timer starts from 30. So it's like I have 30 seconds to get as many points as I can. So that's how I've coded the game. So if you are on the same Scratch landing page that I'm showing right now, I think you've both made accounts. If you, sorry, that's not true. So for some of us, if you've made an account, your project will be saved. If you weren't able to get an account created today, that's fine, but your project won't be able to save. So just consider today a learning. So you're figuring out today so that later on you can create an account and you can make some projects that you want to be able to save and share. So once again, in the top left corner, there's a create button. When you click create, it's going to bring you into a brand new project with very little code done. Here we are, and this is the main setup for Scratch. So over on the far right, this character is called Scratch Cat, and this is where we get to see and things will be displayed. We're actually not going to use Scratch Cat. So the first thing I'll get you to do is down here where it shows the little sprite number 1, you can hit that trash can so that he will go away. We don't need him today. In the middle is where we build our code. And over here on the left, I call these the drawers. Each one of these colored circles pulls up a whole bunch of different coding blocks. So if today you ever miss a step and you don't know where I found a block, go by the color coding. So if I have a block that's blue and you don't know where I found it, it's going to be in that blue sensing drawer, if that's the right blue, unless it's the motion one. So if you're needing things, go for the color codes to help you find them. Well, to get started, if you remember in my project, I had a balloon, but yours doesn't actually have to be a balloon. But we're going to get a character that's going to be in that video sensing game. So if you can go down below to this bottom right corner where it shows a picture of a cat and a plus sign, click on Choose a Sprite. And my advice is to pick one that's cartoony. I know there's some people there. It doesn't really work as well with those ones, with the color change effect. So my advice would be to pick one of the really cartoony ones, like the banana or the basketball or the balloon. I think I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with basketball. Just give you another 10 seconds to choose your sprite. All right, and you can change that later on as well if you're not happy with your pick. But just for the sake of our time, I will keep going. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to enable the video sensing, because right now it's just showing that white background, but I want it to be using the device camera. So to do that, if you follow my pointer to the bottom left corner, there's a blue button with a plus sign and some blocks. This is where you can bring in some new blocks. So if you had a specific device like a Makey Makey or a microbit, you can bring in those things, but that's not us today. Today we are all about the video sensing. So for me, it's in this third spot here. And when you click on video sensing, it jumps me right down to it. There, it starts working right away. It's added a new drawer over here on the left. So now I've got those motion blocks, the sounds, and the events. And there's also blocks specifically for video sensing. Move that basketball. There we go. So let's get started with our code here. So the first block that we want is we want to use a block that says when video motion is greater than 10. Zoom in a bit for you there. So this block is watching my video and it's looking for me to make a movement. So that value 10 is one that they've just decided to give us because it's kind of looking for basic movement. If you find that your object is being affected too much, like it's not working the way you want it to once we get it coded, you can play with that value. Maybe 20 would be a better option. You can play with those different values to see which one's going to work the best. So for this code, I want it to be that when the video motion is greater than 10, so what's going to happen when it sees the video? Well, when that happens, I would like the ball to move to a new random position. So if I go to the motion drawer, that blue motion, there is a block, what is it, about 6 down. It says glide 1 second to random position. And yep, it should already be working. I guess I missed one little step that my computer didn't show, but yours might have. It's going to ask you for permission to use your camera when you turn on video sensing. If you say block, none of this is going to work. Just drop it in the chat, teachers, if that happened to somebody. If they said block camera so that it's not working right now, I can show you what the fix is. But unless we're all good, I'll just I can keep going. You're probably playing and having fun with this right now, so maybe I'll give you a sec if your ball is moving and working. Oh, it's working with my head too. Actually, it's funny. I noticed the shake of my desk is enough movement that it thinks I'm trying to move the ball. And you can play with that timing as well. If you wanted something to be faster, you need it to be less than a second, then that's 0.5. I could try half a second so that the ball will move around even faster to its new position. So I'm going to add one more thing to happen here with that ball. And it's more just kind of for fun because I want you to learn some of these different blocks that are available. If you go into the purple looks drawer on the left, there is a block that says, I got to go down a little bit. It says change color effect by 25. Careful, I don't want the set color. I want change color. So now it's when it sees the motion, it will move to a random position and it will change color. And once again, you can play with the effect by number. It can change that 25 to something smaller or bigger. There's also some other effects that you can play with, but some of them just kind of aren't going to work for what we're doing today. So I might stick with color, but there's lots of fun things that you can tinker with in Scratch. Um, so in thinking about my game and what I want to happen, I wanted it to be able to keep score, and I also wanted it to be able to count down so that I have a set amount of time to play the little game. So in math and in coding, a number that changes, so like a value that doesn't stay the same, like a score. So a score is a number that changes, it goes up all the time. Or time is going to be changing, it's going to count down for us. Those are variables, they are numbers that don't stay the same. And in Scratch, we can create some variables. So down here on the left, there's an orange drawer that says variable. And we need to make a new variable. So I will click on that button that says make a variable. And I'll call my first one points. Let's get the timer, or sorry, the score generated. So again, I went to that orange variables drawer. I clicked make a variable, and I made a variable called points. And to get it to display, it might have done it automatically for you like it did for me, because here I can see on my screen, it says points equals 0. If yours is not displaying, there's a little checkbox next to the word points, and that's where you can turn it on or off if it's going to show it. So I do want mine to show because I want to see the score. And so next up, we want the score to start at the beginning of the game. So when I push the green flag button, that's going to be the starting of that game. So we need to get an event block from yellow for when the green flag is clicked. That's like when the game starts. So when green flag is clicked, zoom in a bit better for you. So I'm going back to the variables drawer. So when the green flag is clicked, I would like it to set. So I'm going to grab the set my variable to 0, but I'm going to change that name to points. So that means that every time I hit the green flag, it's going to reset the score. It's going to set it back to 0. So now I need to code the part that tells it that every time I touch that ball, I would like to get a point. So I would like it to change the score by 1 every time. So there's a couple different ways to do this, but the way I'll show, if you know a different way, you're welcome to use it. I'm going to grab that when video motion is greater than 10 again. And using the variable block for change my variable by 1, I'm going to make it so it says change points by 1. So now every time I touch the ball, I can see that my points counter is going up. I'm up to 10 points already here. Now I'm noticing something as well with my code. I notice that if I kind of keep touching it, like if my arm, if there's movement on it the whole time, I'm actually getting several points for one touch sometimes. Just the way that it lands like on my head or on my body or something, I end up getting several points. It's adding them up really fast. So we have to code the fix for that. So I'm thinking that if in my code, I tell it to, when it senses motion, change the points by 1, I can put a wait block in or a pause. I can tell it to wait before it allows new points to come up. In the control drawer, there's a block that says wait for 1 second. So if I say change the points by 1 and then wait 1 second, that means that it's got to wait at least 1 second before it can give me a new point, which works out really well because if we remember that glide block, it should be in its new position already after 1 second. So that's going to mean that I can't cheat and rack up a whole bunch of points. Unless you want to be able to cheat, and then you might leave it. So the last thing that we need to do, I described how I wanted my game to be a set amount of time. Like that's one of the conditions for my game. You have 30 seconds to get as many points as you can, and that's how you could tell if you could do it better than somebody else. That's how you would tell if you were the winner. So just like the points, how they were a variable, they were a number that was changing, so is time. Time is variable, it changes. So we need to make a new variable. So just like before, we're heading to that orange variables drawer, and I'm going to make a new variable. I'm calling mine time remaining. You can call yours just timer or whatever you like. So again, I'm in variables. I clicked on make a variable, and I called mine time remaining. So then, just like before, I want to set the time. So every time I click start on the game, that green flag, I want it to be back to the same position for whoever's playing it. So I need to set my variable for green flag. So when green flag is clicked, I want the points to be at 0, and I want the time remaining to be at 30. Maybe your game's faster than mine. Maybe you're only going to give them 10 seconds, or you want to give them a full 60 seconds, minute to do it. You can decide how long you want your game to be. So I now have it set to how much time I'm going to give them, but now I need to code it to do that countdown. So it's going to count its way down to 0. So step 1, I need to go to control, that orange block, and I'm going to grab the one that says forever. And while I'm here in control, I'm going to grab the first block, which is going to tell my game how that I'm counting with seconds. So I'm going to get it to wait 1 second. So those were both in control. I got the forever block and attached it at the bottom there underneath the sets. And it was right above it is the wait 1 second. Then I'll head back to the variables drawer. And I can tell it to change time remaining. Well, as it is right now, it says time remaining by 1. So that's going to be a positive value, which means time is going to go up. But I want it to go down. So I actually would like my value to change by -1. So now on my project, if you hit the green flag, you should see your points reset and your timer reset. And hopefully the timer will start counting down for you. And the only other thing that I wanted to add to the game is kind of optional, so we don't need to totally go through the whole thing. The only other thing that I would add is for time remaining. If you notice that if I don't hit the stop button, it keeps counting backwards. So my time is actually -303 right now. So it keeps counting backwards. It doesn't just stop at 0. So I could add some code to tell it to stop the timer when it gets to 0. but maybe people are just happy to have some time to do some customizing. So I could show, maybe I'll just give you another minute or two. I'll show you some different blocks that you could use to customize your game to make it a little more personal. And then we can wrap this up. So to create that little loop that tells it that if the timer gets to 0, you should stop the timer. This is just optional, so I won't expect everybody needing it. But if I go to control and I put in an if block, and in operations, if I take this one that says something equals 50, I can tell it that when my variable of time is equal to 0, it should use the control block of stop. So just optional. Everybody doesn't have to do that. But if you wanted yours to not go into the negatives like mine is doing right now, you can tell it that if the time is 0, stop. But to wrap up, I'll just show you some different blocks that might be kind of fun to customize your game a little bit. So for example, if you went into the sound drawer, you could tell it that every time you touch the ball or whatever object you picked, it shouldn't just move and change color. Maybe it also could make a little sound. So if you're doing that in your classroom, make sure your volume is way down just for the sanity of your classmates and teacher. But I could do, look, it's even got to, it knows that I have a basketball, I guess. The sounds lined up for play sound, basketball bounce. So now every time I do it, I know you won't hear mine, but I hear it in my headphones. Every time I touch it, it'll make a little basketball bouncing sound in my headphones. You might also use some of the looks blocks. So nothing that you have to do, but by adding in some different blocks, maybe you'll do changing an effect that's not color. Maybe you'll make something go pixelated, or play with the whirl function, see what these different ones do. And you can just tinker with those and see what you can find in these blocks. So to leave you for the session as we wrap up, I guess my suggestion would be make this game even more customized by adding in a block that's a look or a sound. As a final option, if you go up to the top here, so we're on the code tab. It's important to know how to get back to that. We're on the code tab. If you switch over to the costumes tab, here you can customize what your costume looks like. So right now mine looks like this plain basketball, but I could, with a couple little additions, I could make this look like a very happy basketball. And then I can jump. So I'm on the costumes tab now. I can go back to code. So now that basketball that I've just customized is now a part of the game. So again, I went to costumes so that I was able to draw and customize that costume.